Prisoners of the Ark, hear me now. You've been given a second chance.
You're being sent to the ground. All 100 of you.
But it's not safe, no.
This gives you a chance to live.
We've explored apocalypses and what have you, but exploring the Earth again for the first time after it hasn't been touched in 97 years, I think that's really different.
This is not the world that they left 100 years ago. There are monsters here. There are things here that you have to defend yourself against.
It's a whole new world, literally.
This is Earth, Clark. Anything's possible.
It's sort of a new twist on the future. The future's not necessarily friendly.
The locations we shot at in North Vancouver in the mountains, you know, we talked about it often, how they looked like they were on a soundstage because everything was just so green and so lush.
The woods in Vancouver are gorgeous, and Mother Nature did that. So you can really tell a story of a world, an Earth, that has been overgrown by nature.
We all just looked at each other and went, this is it. This is the forest. It's surreal before you even do anything. And we thought, you know, dropping a big chunk of metal in the middle of that green forest was exactly the right choice.
We built the dropship there. We had both our stages in Langley, British Columbia, but we also had a stage essentially in the woods.
One of my favorite shots from the whole first season was that moment when the door opens and there's large blasts of CO2. It's quite backlit, so it looks quite exciting. We don't know what's going to be out there. We don't know if it's safe. We don't know if it's dangerous. We don't know if the air is going to kill them.
The air could be toxic.
The air's toxic. We're all dead anyway.
You get this great immediate juxtaposition of steel and metal of the dropship and the door opening and the green, verdant, wonderful, lush forest. And I think that those two played against each other all of season one.
It's a real big moment in the show when the kids come out of that spaceship and first step on the ground.
What I like is grounded science fiction, where there's always a explanation scientifically. It has to be something that we believe, that could really be.
Wow.
Jason made it really clear that he wanted to see different creatures on Earth that had been mutated by the radiation. However, those mutations couldn't be too far-fetched. They had to make sense. The creatures that we're seeing had to be of this world.
No animals, huh?
You can see radiation mutations in the world today. If you go to Chernobyl, which is, I think, we're 25 years post-meltdown, there are amazingly bizarre animals walking around in the woods there.
In creating the two-headed deer, we looked at a lot of actual reference, and believe me, the reference wasn't pretty. You know, I had nightmares about it. We looked at different animals that were actually born with a second head. It had to be something that was horrible, really, really grotesque looking, but it was also a mutation that the deer had to be able to live with. The key to the deer was that the second head had to be hidden because we wanted it to be a surprise point.
What?
A lot of people actually thought it was a real deer that we augmented with the second head, but in fact, the deer was 100% CGI.
Greg, our AD, decided to be our eyeline for the two-headed deer, and it was ridiculous. Like, we had to keep a straight face because this deer turns around and it has two heads, and his way of doing it was we were like, you can't do that. You just can't do that. It was good. It was interesting.
I love the butterfly sequence in episode 2.
Oh, beautiful.
It was so different from what we had done on the show up until that point. Everything had been very, you know, high impact, where this is really a surreal, magical world that we were stumbling upon. And shooting that was a big challenge too, because Marie, who plays Octavia on the show, we had to have the butterflies actually land on our arms, so we had to actually like track a digital double of her into our 3D software where we had the arms moving around and we had the butterflies. So it was a really challenging technical sequence, but it was also a really beautiful sequence too that I think really came out nice. In the real world, when you do practical effects in camera, it's done with prosthetics. We also have that in the digital world as well, where we do CGI or virtual prosthetics. So that's what we did with the horses. We had a real live action horse, and we created a CG mutation then that we then attached after the fact, and it all comes together and looks pretty good.
The scene would have been great without the two-headed horse, but the two-headed horse is like like icing on the cake.
What the hell is that?
Run! Run!
The toxic fog was based on, in I think 1950s London, I want to say, there was an outbreak of acid smog, which was coal fires that basically just created this toxic cloud that sat over London and killed like 50 or 60 people in a couple days.
The fog had to act and behave in a very specific way. It wasn't just a standard effect that we pulled from our library. It couldn't be, because we had to actually have the fog surround the trees and like come from behind the trees and then envelop the trees. So everything had to be treated on a shot-by-shot basis.
What's she in there? She's still hot.
Zoic, it was amazing the whole season. I knew what I wanted, and so I gave a lot of notes, and it needed to be real. And it's pretty awesome.
Obviously, there are areas in the show where you know that this has to be visual effects, but there are areas where, you know, we want it to be seamless. We want it to be believable. And I think that's what we do here, you know, at Zoic. We try to make sure that our effects don't detract from the story at all. We want to really invoke the feelings within the viewer that if this actually was happening, this is what it would feel like. You know, that's the key here, is that we make the unbelievable believable.